The Trivium Part 2: Grammar, Logic, and Rhetoric. I want to talk about this some more today since I think that a lot of people struggle with being articulate, and it's a lot better over recent years, probably because of the increase in podcasts and content creators that helped with this or possibly heard it. I mean, there is brain rot and attention span that is just lowered over time, especially with shorts, reels, and TikToks, even though admittedly as a content creator, I'm arguably part of the problem as well. Although I'm trying to be productive with it. But anyways, there's also, that's has a lot to do with grammar in terms of logic. There's the feels before reels society and just overall prioritizing the feels and feelings at the expense of logic, in which I don't think that the two are zero sum, but more people do think that they're zero sum than I'd like to. I don't think that they need to be adversarial. I think that there's space for them both, for them to work in tandem. But I also think that there's a certain level of virtue that comes with that, which I'll be talking about today as well. Absolutely. And then finally, with rhetoric, when people state their opinion as a fact and use hyperbole and superlatives to sound more confident and convincing, which I think is done in a way sleazier way than I would like. That being said, I would like to take this moment to welcome you back to the It Be What It Be podcast, powered by StreamYard. As you can see, I'm on one of the lowest tier of StreamYard. It's still a pretty new channel, frankly, and I'm doing what it is that I can to persevere with content creation. Started a new channel only at the end of last year, and I think it'd be worthwhile to show you all some of what I mean by that. And so over here, as you can see on YouTube, the It Be What It Be podcast, we'll even take a bit more of a look into the description that I have over here. A new channel that has started only as of December 1st, 2024. But since then, I'm pretty actually happy with some of the progress that I've made. I mean, towards the end of last year, 2024 in December, that was just, I wanted to start the channel then so that then I would be able to hit the ground running coming into 2025. And I got some kinks worked out. Definitely needed to get better at certain elements of the production. That much is for sure, as well as just getting better with my presentation to an extent. Having a few live streams that I hosted that a couple live streams that I hosted that are now private because of just some of the production blunders that I would have made. But since then, I have 2 subscribers, 12 videos, 316 views. Certainly have some of my socials over here. So I encourage you to follow on Instagram and on Threads, even on Twitter as well, and Blue Sky, and on TikTok as well. I have 5 different socials there. Of course, there's YouTube as well. And this podcast is about unveiling and addressing the mechanics of people, interpersonal interactions, societal influences, and life in general. Because throughout my life, many people would claim that intangibles are not quantifiable and that situations in life just happened and that it's impossible to be articulated or put into words. That never sat well with me. Hence, here I am sharing some of what I've discovered while continuing to learn more along the way, because this is very much so a learning journey for me as well. I definitely don't like I don't want to portray myself as some sort of social media know-it-all the way that some of these other content creators present themselves. And also while not letting the behaviors of the Homo sapien species as a whole off the hook. And that's just to say that there's just some parts of humans as a species, as a creature, that I'm not a big fan of, frankly. And that's a large reason why I present myself in this way, because I do want to have a certain level of anonymity for the sake of protection. Because if I was to offend someone with some of what it is that I have to say, even though I'm trying to help, this is what I believe is making a positive difference in society by me being this content creator and trying to contribute to the species and trying to make the world a better place and trying to make life more convenient for the species and to improve the quality of life for humans. However, despite all of that, there may be people that are just going to be offended with what it is that I have to say. And I don't necessarily want that to blow back on me, nor do I think that that's fair, frankly, for it to, because certainly being socially punished, socially sanctioned, can have a significant impact on one's quality of life. That all being said, I'll actually take a look at some of the socials right now, starting off with the YouTube. There are a series of different shorts. I have 10 different shorts that I've created, 3 of them from the last year, and then 7 of them from this year. One of them already has, in fact, 244 views. I feel very lucky with that the algorithm would have picked up that short. Even another one from yesterday, which has 42 different views. So those are some of the biggest views that I have on some of my shorts. Definitely encourage you to check them out. There's certainly, of course, the live as well. I'm kind of doing a mixture of doing shorts and then also doing live streams. I'm not necessarily, as of right now, doing just YouTube videos in that regard. So I'm may work on that in the future, but as you can see, there's some more that I want to do with this channel and that I want to work on, such as my thumbnails for sure. So that is certainly a factor. But to also show some of the other socials, certainly there is Instagram that I have as well that I want to give you a look see at. And through that, you can see that there has been some progress on Instagram. In fact, more views on my Instagram content. And as you can see, there is some work that I was doing to try to get better at presenting through Instagram. I am pretty proud, frankly, that out of all of the reels that I've created, 8 out of 10 of them, 80% of my reels have all gotten more than 100 views. Now, I don't imagine that that's not significant. As you can see, I have no followers on Instagram despite having 2 subscribers on YouTube. So, I'm not necessarily thinking that this is particularly significant, but I am happy for it as a new creator, and frankly, I am proud of myself. I certainly do also have a Twitter or X. I mean, I'm certainly of the mentality of I'm probably going to call it Twitter. But with that being said, definitely getting some views on the content over here as well. And I am also pretty proud of that, posting some of the different shorts across a variety of different platforms, and 38 it just reached 38 different people or accounts or whatever you want to call it for the maximum for the piece of content for the post that I made that had the most reach. So I'm really happy about that. There is also, of course, Zuckerberg's version of X or Twitter. And so that's going to be Threads as well. So another opportunity for you to follow for the threads. Absolutely. And other than that, then there's also my Blue Sky. I'm going to save the best for last. I'm particularly proud of this last one, but I have Blue Sky as well. So I'm going to be putting that one through for you to see. And with Blue Sky, I have all my posts up there. Well, all but one, because Blue Sky doesn't like videos that are over 9,000. I saw the opportunity and I decided to take it. Now, Blue Sky doesn't like videos that are over 1 minute. And my last video was 1 minute and 1 second long. So I just have to be working on just being more concise with some of my shorts. But as I was saying, I saved the best for last, and I do have that right over here as well for you all to see. And that would be, as controversial as this may be, It is TikTok. Yes, TikTok, absolutely. And I'm going to decline those cookies and just show you that with the TikTok, I actually have 7 followers on there, so it's the account that I am the most successful with, which in a way I do think is kind of tragic because especially with what's happening with TikTok in the United States, that TikTok is looking like it's no longer potentially going to be available in the United States as of January 19th. Now, I really do not want to be partisan or antagonistic with what it is that I'm about to say, but it does seem like Donald Trump is interested in trying to preserve TikTok in the United States, despite Joe Biden wanting to take it down. And despite it being, I mean, Donald Trump in his first term said that would, he may look into taking down TikTok, so I don't want to say that it is completely Joe Biden's position. But nonetheless, there's a lot of drama that's happening there in terms of, like interference, from China or well, not interference, but information gathering and whether or not that could be a threat to national security, So I'm very nervous about what's going to happen to TikTok because it is my most successful platform. I just started it this year. I'm going to try to keep going with it, see what happens. As you can see, a couple of my earlier videos didn't really get any traction, but for my third one, I was able to get to a point where now a majority of my TikToks, I would say what 1, 2, 3, 4, and approaching 5, majority of them have over 200 views, if not having over 800. And I'm exceptionally proud of that. Very grateful for the people that are following me here on TikTok as well. 7 followers, the most followers that I have, 2 subscribers on YouTube as well. And with that being said, I'll let you take a look back at the TikTok, but I definitely wanted to talk quite a bit about the Trivium and to go further into critical thinking in general. And so to reestablish, in fact, I'll just bring it back to me for a moment. There is the liberal arts, and the liberal arts consist of the trivium and the quadrivium. And in the trivium, there was grammar, logic, and rhetoric, you know. And logic, I'm going to be talking about in later videos. I have pretty much an entire series that's based off of that. Woo. But that being said, grammar and rhetoric are going to be two of the two elements of the trivium that I'm going to be discussing more today. And I already even did get started on talking about that, and you'll notice that in a lot of the different videos that I have. In fact, if I actually bring this back up, I also have a few different outfits that I am using to be able to just keep some variety, even though I do want to protect my appearance. And you'll notice that for some of the shorts or the TikTok reels that I made at the end of last year in December, that's where I had the black balaclava. And then starting off this year, that's where I had the white and the red. And that's also coordinated with the YouTube videos that I have. So if I go back to YouTube, you will notice that with the videos that I had. Now you don't quite see it over here. Oh, there you go. Now you can see it there with the preview here of the YouTube. But what it is that I'm just trying to say is that they're color coded essentially on a topic basis. Not so sure if I'm going to be continuing to do it like that. I mean, I'm kind of building the plane as I'm flying it, trying to figure it out as I go. But I also definitely did want to get started. This is something that I'm trying to do to try to make more of an effort to make a specific dedicated effort with content creation this year. And I am pretty excited so far with just some of where it's gone. And, anyways, the point just being is that I am just going to be continuing to be talking about the trivium, like I said, particularly grammar and rhetoric. But I do think it's worthwhile to do somewhat of a recap of what it is that we've spoken about so far on this channel. So I'm even going to just open this one up. And of course, hey, you can hear some of the audio, but you know, I'm just going to mute that there. So I talked about the trivium. I went into some of the channel. I talked about this one YouTube channel, Amore, which is definitely some of the inspiration and where I first heard of the trivium. Definitely want to give that credit. I was also very interested in logical fallacies, and you'll recognize that even if I go to the YouTube channel as of right now, if I show you this right here and there, Exorna Education, which I think is very interesting. They must have just changed their name just now. Exorna Education as opposed to Amor, Amor. That's very, very, very interesting. But nonetheless, that Exorna Education, I wonder what they're going to do with this channel. But regardless, that this is where I was first introduced to the trivium, and I definitely was interested in logical fallacies. But the main point I wanted to show over here is that some of these videos are 12 years old. You'll notice on the bottom left over there, at least 12 years old. In fact, that video on the ad hominem fallacy was made in February of 20. Let me get this right, 2012. February of 2012. And so that's approaching 13 years. And my main point with this is that some of these concepts, they've existed for definitely for a while for sure, and have the people have been creating content on them over the course of the last decade. And I've been exposed to it, but I am somewhat late to some of this. I did make a reference to America and the political polarization that America is facing, and particularly 2016 with Donald Trump for sure, and how critical thinking was trying to be emphasized quite a bit around that time in the hopes of trying to make more productive debate and conversations between different people, and particularly with the interaction of different ideas. That being said, I think that for where I am at in my life, I am in my 30s. I think that I am in the best position that I've ever been to be able to speak about this with a certain level of confidence, a certain level of awareness, and a certain level of life experience as well, some trial and error as well. And so I think that in terms of my own personal timing, that I'm in a good place to speak about this. And I think that I'd like to think that it's not too late to throw in my 2 cents and have my own contribution. But nonetheless, this definitely was very inspirational for me, and so I definitely wanna give kudos to this creator. And, that one of the main parts, especially with the Trivium, is that the Trivium, and I'll even bring up a Wikipedia page that I have, right over here, having some of my links ready to go so I can hit the ground running. And you see, the liberal arts, they were introduced all the way back when there was classical antiquity. So that is, the period of cultural European history between the 8th century BC and the 5th century AD, up to as recent, well, as late as the 400s. And the liberal arts in general, especially what is said in this video here, Introduction to the Trivium, they were they were relevant up until the late 19th, early 20th century. In other words, the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then they stopped being relevant. I mean, the trivium and liberal arts, they used to be taught in universities, and someone would require knowledge of that before they would go on to study law or what have you. And then now it's no longer present in schools. And I find that today and in the contemporary age being, in fact, I wonder if I could even, yes, I wonder if, yes. The contemporary age is the period of history that began after World War II in 1945 and continues to the present. It is a subset of modern history. And I think that that's very important because a lot of our world today is based off of dynamics that were established post World War II. In fact, World War II, 1939 to 1945, right? I think that this is very interesting because we are 80 years from the end of World War II. I think that's actually insane. I think that's crazy. I think that, wow, the timing of me doing this content is pretty interesting in that regard, as far as I'm concerned. And what I'm just trying to say is that the last 80 years has definitely shaped a lot of, what it is that what we're experiencing in the modern day, for sure. We definitely have this post World War II era, this kind of American Eurocentric world that we're living in as of right now, where that America Eurocentric culture is the dominant culture across the world. English is the most popular language in the world. And I mean, the British and now, frankly, American Empire has really been very successful, frankly. And that all being said, all that to go back to, in the modern day, in the contemporary age, the liberal arts have been lost. They're not taught in schools anymore. And I think that we could really benefit from having the humanities being taught in schools, at least in high school. Because I think that schools really just focus on the factory model and trying to get people into a job, trying to have them be like people who show up on time, are willing to follow instructions, do assignments, to respect authority, to be used to showing up 5 days a week for a certain amount of time. It's like a glorified care, and it conditions people to get a job, and that's it. It doesn't tell people, about what type of friends to make, for example, or what type of relationships to engage in, among other factors. It doesn't prepare people for dealing with the politicking of interpersonal interaction, whether or not that be in the workplace, in your family, in your friendships, and in your intimate relationships. Four pillars of interpersonal interaction that I really like to highlight. And it doesn't prepare you for any of that. I mean, I figure that you go to school to learn, but they just teach you just how to get a job, and that's about it. So that is where I want to try to be able to make a difference, to try to preserve some of the good of the liberal arts and the trivium and critical thinking, because they've been really corrupted as well. And that's something that I'm trying to call out with this YouTube channel and my content creation in general. I really am trying to call this out. And so, looking at some other notes here, I definitely did talk about the trivium, as I've been saying. And so I started off talking about grammar, and there's a few areas that I wanted to, as I was saying, calling out, especially from the very beginning of this video, when I'm saying that there's people that are not as articulate as I'd like them to be. And I think that a lot of people have really just like given up on language and are frankly very like linguistically lazy. And I've heard so much throughout my life that there's no words to be able to describe the particular sensation, situation, or the feeling that someone is experiencing. And I do not believe that to be true. I do think that people are just giving up and stopping short, and are not really trying to improve in their ability to articulate. So I do think that that is linguistically lazy, and I think that that's very negative as well. I think that that is a very much so underestimating human potential. I definitely think that we are capable of more than that. for sure, especially considering that the only people that don't talk that I can think of are cavemen and babies. And English, or yeah, at the very least, English has improved over time. I mean, there used to be the old E English. Think about the Shakespearean English. You know, like language was developed and constructed. It's improved over time. That's an objective fact. You know, and so it's very disappointing to me that people just want to just give up on that, or just go and just completely trust their feelings and use their feelings to guide them, which I don't necessarily think is 100% wrong. I just think that there's a complacency there, and I'm not really for that. But it's not only just that, it's also that have become really corrupt in their use of the language as well, which essentially is lying, essentially. And I'm not going to say that I'm someone who's never lied or that I never will lie. I've certainly done the whole lying in terms of calling in sick to work when I didn't really want to go because it was too stressful, or or it was pretty toxic situations that are really unfair that I didn't want to deal with, or because I had other activities going on, because I had two jobs, because I had an assignment in university, because I was trying to interview for another job, frankly. And so I'm not going to say that I'm the arbiter of drawing the line with lying. I definitely do think that, I mean, one principle or code that I try to use, and I'll see if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it. Yes. And I believe, let me see there. Yes, I believe that okay. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, all right, I'll share this so that I don't leave you all hanging. But be kind to people and ruthless to institutions, or even, I would say, systems. And that came from Michael Brooks. So I definitely want to be honoring where I got that quote from, and that's just one element of it. And what it is that I'm trying to say is that, I mean, for a job, for a workplace that's not even my own business, and in particular for a situation, I'll try to give myself a bit of real estate here. For a situation that is, yeah, we'll do something like that. For situations that I think that there's a particularly disproportionate power imbalance, but especially one that is not one that I even necessarily contributed to. And what I mean by that is that I didn't necessarily design the system to be this way. I'm born into this environment, and then here we are. And what I'm trying to say is just that, considering the disproportionate amount of power between a workplace and me as an individual, and being demanded to be there 5 days a week, for 8 hours a day. And if I don't work, then my quality of life drops precipitously, essentially ending up homeless. And so, therefore, you're effectively forced to work, essentially. I mean, sure, there's other ways to make money by all means, especially nowadays, from Bitcoin to trying to do content creation. Someone can do only, and I'll let you fill in the last word there if you catch what I'm saying. Hardy har har. But anyways, among other factors, there's multiple ways to make money. And I definitely think that having multiple income streams is very important. And ultimately, what I'm just trying to say is that that's a line that I would draw. And some of the other scenarios where, I think that it would be more, appropriate, or at the very least, in my personal opinion, where I would consider the stakes to be particularly sufficient to lie, was because, say, someone's life was in danger, you know or to avoid societal scrutiny. Like, for example, some people who are in the closet and they're not being transparent about their I know what I want to say, but I want to make it YouTube friendly about the people that they want to be intimate with and the demographic that they want to be intimate with. If you catch what I'm saying, LGBTQ. For example, if someone was in the closet and didn't want to come out with that because of the societal scrutiny that they're going to be facing and how that can nullify the quality of their life, if someone was lying about a particular like medical condition, depending on what it is. I mean, if someone has HIV, I definitely think that you should tell your partner, the people that you would be engaging in physical intimacy with, you know. Frankly, if someone had a criminal record as well, these are stakes that I think are particularly high compared to I didn't want to hang out with a friend. So I'm going to lie and make an excuse. I'm not going to say no. I didn't want to go out with this person. I didn't want to date this person, you know. And I just think that a lot of people just struggle with just saying no. And then, even if someone asks why, because some people like, I think it's wild that it's the status quo in Western societies where if someone asks why, it's like this egregious transgression. Like, oh my gosh, how could you ask me that? Oh my gosh, you're asking why. Oh, I'm so stressed out. At the same time, so I definitely do think that there is room for more strength in the askee. But at the same time, for the asker, I also do think it's important to take no for an answer as well and to not try to like argue or fight with the person per se. I mean, ideally, no means no, but people are pretty corrupt in the use of their language. Some people don't like to say no, so they'll just ghost or they'll say yes, even though what they really mean is no, which, as far as I'm concerned, if someone runs into problems with that, if you didn't say no and you run into a problem because someone crosses your boundary and you never said no, as far as I'm concerned, I'm indifferent as to whether or not you become a victim in that situation. I definitely am an advocate of just say no. And it used to be very difficult for me too to say no by all means. It definitely really was. I definitely had to get better at doing that. But eventually, I certainly got there. And that's something that I'd like to encourage for more people to do. But nonetheless, you know, it's just that. It's just I think that a lot of people lie so easily when the stakes are so low. I think it's very sleazy for sure. I talked about that quite a bit in my last live stream as well. I think that there's a lack of strength of character there. I also think it's a bit ridiculous that some people would expect other people to lie to protect them, and it's like they're so disturbed by someone's virtue and by someone's values because they won't lie for them. You know, I think that's really ridiculous as well. I definitely think that honesty is the best policy, but I also think that there's virtue that comes with that as well, which I'm going to be talking about later on. And so, for the most part, that is. Oh, and one other part that I certainly will say is that I think it's also ridiculous that people generally conclude social or emotional incompetence for someone who values honesty to the extent of being like, principled by it, and, emotional incompetence, like, oh, I didn't lie to you, but you wanted to be lied to. Like, I literally heard someone say that your next girlfriend's probably not going to be your last girlfriend, but what should be the case, what is the optimal and emotionally superior way of operating, is to effectively pretend as if it's going to last forever. Similarly, with the job, that your next job's not going to be your last job, especially in the modern day. We're no longer staying at a career for 30 years. However, that like they consider it to be so emotionally degenerate to tell someone that, I'm not going to retire at this company. That being said, in a situation that I ran into, I didn't outright say that. Like I also don't think that someone should just volunteer the information, but my boss at the time basically like asked a series of questions that led to that point. Very much so, very much continued to pick and poke and prod. And it's similar to me, as I was saying, in the last episode. If someone's asking, do I look fat in this dress? I mean, like you asked, like, and I think that that's very problematic that there's a certain lack of accountability that some people would take in terms of the questions that they're asking. I mean, don't ask a question that you don't want the answer to. That just seems to me, frankly, fairly simple. So, I mean, yeah, dude, I'm not going to ask certain people certain questions if I don't necessarily want to know the answer to them, essentially. So, there's a lot of that, and there's also, I mean, I definitely want to do a live stream later on in terms of what intelligence, but I don't think that lying is very smart either. There's this notion that lying can be smart because you're getting what you want because someone tricked you, but I think it contributes to a faker and faker society. I think that it makes a ripple effect, which makes it so that the society is just a lot less trusting. That trust is like, it's almost like a privilege nowadays, which I think is disgusting. I can't believe that. Like, wow. Oh my gosh. And some people, they try to get what they want, and they call it playing the game. They call it adapting, even though I think that there is a certain level of sociopathical tendencies that are associated with that. And that is going to be the first video, actually, that I wanted to discuss. It comes from this content creator. His name is LFA, or at least that's the name of the channel. And I'm going to see if I can get this up on the screen. Yes, I can. And okay. And let's take a look right here with some commentary. And I am, of course, going to full screen as well. All right, let's go.
But then they get out there and they find out, how corrupt the game really is. And this is what a lot of people call the red pill, right? You switching from the blue pill to the red pill. But that game is being played everywhere you go.
So, to give a bit of context, I mean, the name of this video are Men Are Giving Up. Now, I definitely think that this can apply to women as well. 1000%. I think that men and women are more similar than we are different. If we were more different than we were similar, I believe that we would be a different species, frankly. So that's just my take on that. I definitely think, especially with a lot of the technology from birth control pill to just a lot of the modern technology that's allowed for the modern day to be a lot more safe, a lot more control over our environment, that has led to it being more possible for women to be able to participate in the workforce and to be able to do a lot of what a man traditionally did. Now, I'm not going to try to get way too into masculinity and femininity and talking about the different male men and women in that regard. I'm just trying to diffuse the whole they're saying men are giving up, and I'm just trying to generalize that. That being said, what it is that he's saying over here about the red pill, blue pill, and I realize that there's some stigmas, around that about like, oh, like the Matrix and what have you, but I still do think that there's a lot to that is very appropriate in terms of the accuracy of what the red pill and blue pill, this Matrix analogy, is trying to portray. That we're brought up, particularly in Western cultures, a particular way. We're brought up and, we're told that we ought to be nice no matter what, be kind no matter what, and we're not really informed about a lot of the politicking, as I was even saying, earlier, especially with what schools teach. We're not really informed about a lot of the politicking and or even the game at all. There's almost nothing that prepares you for that. Your schooling doesn't prepare you for that. Your parents don't necessarily prepare you for that. If anything, your parents or your family are running game on you. Your friends don't know what they're doing either. Your friends and family don't necessarily know. And then you go into the work world, or you just go into interpersonal interactions in general, whether it be dating, what have you, trying to make friends, what have you, even in your own family. And then it's like it slaps you in the face. It just hits you like, wow, the the game is afoot, whether or not you're playing or not, you know. And pretty much no matter what happens, no matter which workplace that you're going into, no matter if you're interacting with another person, that game is always going to be there. Now, I don't think that it has to be sinister. And I do think that there's parts of the game that can be fun and that can be that are not that are just not so antagonistic, that are not so adversarial per se, such as, for example, trying to sell yourself, advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself. I don't think that that's necessarily bad, but certainly that there's like the backstabbing, the trying to use other people for your own benefit, the trying to do the least while gaining the most. I think that there's a lot of that that's very sleazy, very corrupt, and very disgusting.
A lot of people just don't want to play it. It's hard to get really good at the game when you have morals and you have ethics. When you have principles, it's difficult. Okay. And it's everywhere you go. No matter what career you choose, or damn near whatever career you choose, it's the same game being played.
And just like that. And one element in particular, for sure, when you have morals, you have ethics, you have values, you have principles, it can be tough to get good at the game because the game's quite corrupt. You know, if you are operating with a particular set of rules and someone else is operating with a different set of rules, it's almost like a self-imposed limitation on you. If you are your own country and you're saying, we're not going to have a military, good luck with that. you know I think it's unfortunate. You have to have the capacity to be able to fight back. You have to have the capacity to defend yourself, the capacity to be the warrior in the garden instead of the gardener in the war. And that's what I'm trying to say. I think that we're told to basically be gardeners, and we're told that being warriors is effectively, it's like it's frowned upon, and that was just those types of power dynamics or war only really existed in the past. And I also do think that war is not just exclusive to the past, that war isn't also necessarily just, tanks and arms and explosives, or even just physically fighting against someone. I also think that war is essentially political antagonism, linguistic antagonism, like trying to compete with someone else over different ideas, for example. So there's a number of different types of warfare, absolutely, you know. And so no matter what, that's going to be happening. And essentially, I think that it's important for people to get better at being the bad guy, because if you're the nice guy, or nice, women, I mean, apparently a guy is a person. So for what that's worth, that then someone can, I don't even necessarily like to say, oh, the nice guy, they just don't have the boundaries or what have you. I definitely do think that that's a factor. But, if someone's trying to be a good person, or they're trying to be like morally authentic, among other factors, I think that there's a lot of vulnerabilities that come with that, that again, someone else is playing by a different set of rules. One person's cooperating, another person is competing, and I'll get to that a bit later on. But if one person's cooperating, another person's competing, the person who's cooperating just loses. Game theory. If someone doesn't play the game, the people who are playing the game automatically win, even though the person who's not playing the game could get good at the game, could win. Anyways, I think you get the point.
You walk in there first day and you have a decision to make. You can either figure out who you need to butt kiss, who you need to backstab, and how are you going to make yourself shine? How are you going to take credit for your work? You can either come up with a game plan of those three things.
Butt kiss, backstab, and how you're going to shine. I think it's a really savage world that we live in, very dog eat dog world. I was definitely told that when I was younger, but it's a lot more apparent to me how much of a dog eat dog world it is. And it always has been. I mean, literally colonization, slavery. Maybe I shouldn't say that on YouTube. Indentured servitude, regardless of someone's skin color.
And if you don't, guaranteed you won't succeed. No matter how educated you are, no matter how skilled you are, no matter how strong your work ethic is, it's not what it's about. It's about who you know. It's about playing the game.
And so, no matter how smart you are, no matter how strong your work ethic is, no matter how humble you are, no matter how fair you try to be, I think it's really unfortunate, but and I'm not necessarily proud to be revealing this, but nonetheless, it be what it be. It's the name of the podcast. Anyway.
Butt kissers make it a lot further than genuine, hardworking people. Backstabbers make it a lot quicker than genuine, ethical people. Okay. And peacocks and show offs, they make it a lot quicker than the humble people. And, let's be honest.
Even him saying, let's be honest, I frankly hate saying that. Let's be honest, basically, you're just exposing yourself as a liar, the way that I see it. I would rather say I'm going to be transparent or I'm going to be frank. I'm going to loosen up some of the filter in that regard. I'd much rather say that, but nonetheless, I digress. Yeah, dude, people that dudes and dudettes, by all means. People that if you're humble, you're not going to make it as far, if you're not as antagonistic, or if you're not going to kiss some, what, kiss some rare, some derriere, if you will.
The overwhelming majority of men aren't cut out to play that sort of a cutthroat game. And that's the way the workforce is. You open up your eyes and you realize no matter where you go, it's just like freaking high school. You're working with people with PhDs and master's degrees. They're in there gossiping, backstabbing, bullshitting, butt kissing. That's the world.
I'm not proud of that at all, but I mean, I'd rather a lot of this, to try to put a positive spin on this. I want to try to make other people aware of this. I want to try to highlight this because I want to try to remove power from those strategies by making more people aware of this and by ideally having an impact on the status quo so that these strategies are not going to be as effective.
And I don't even mean to say this as a negative thing, but this is something that pretty much everybody knows. When you walk into your...
I disagree with that. I disagree. Not everybody knows that. I absolutely disagree with that, but nonetheless, because people were brought up a particular way, were conditioned a particular way by society.
Job, it's that same old bullshit. Maybe you quit one job, you go to another company, same old bullshit. Whether you're a police officer, a business executive, a politician, I don't know, a warehouse worker, whatever it may be, you experience this same shit.
I mean, certainly there's quite a few quite a few choice words over there, so I hope that doesn't affect my my YouTube stream, but nonetheless, similar point. And
It's just everywhere. Now, I mean, if you're a doctor or an astronaut or something like that, you may be exempt from this, but we're talking about the 90%, the 95%. And I think when you have your day of reckoning and you wake up and you realize this is all there is, this is really it. And the day I decide to
hear what he says.
Quit playing, that's the day I fail. So
the day you decide to quit playing, that's the day you fail. Again, game theory, if you don't play, someone else is going to play. Imagine you're playing a game of chess and you're not playing and the other person's making moves and the other person is operating in a way that is just so ineffective, that what I'm trying to say is you could have beat them, but you decided not to play. Not if you don't play, you automatically lose, which I think really sucks. And so, arguably with this right now, I'm playing the game too. I'm playing the game by saying, look at what it is that they're doing. Other direction. Look at what it is that they're doing. Not him specifically, even though he's kind of playing the game too. But to get to the point, look at what it is that they are doing, and I'm trying to highlight that. And I am trying to bring shame upon that, the bell, shame. But all of that with the intention of trying to discourage this type of behavior and trying to empower other people to recognize it, to fight it.
So I can either get really good at the game and succeed. I can pretend the game doesn't exist and get taken advantage of. Or I can suck at the game and lose, or I can quit. Those are your options.
It be what it be. That's the name of the podcast.
Look, I just don't think a lot of guys have it in them to play the game, even though they could get really good at it. I just think a lot of guys say, screw this shit. I'm out. Who made this system? Who designed it this way? Fuck this. I'm out. And, I just think.
So I'm just going to make sure, just based off of, just a little bit more.
I think in almost every area of life, men are waking up and that's what they see.
Okay. So I'm just going to leave it there. He definitely goes more into, LFA men are giving up. By all means, feel free to look into that if you wish as well. But, absolutely. This is something that is the case, unfortunately. In my opinion, definitely, I do think that this is very unfortunate that this is the status quo of the modern day world, and there's some more content that I want to bring up. There is this, he is a content creator, but he started off as an artist, and he's a content creator, excuse me. Yeah. He's a content creator, but he started off as an author. And his name is Robert Greene. And Robert Greene really was one of the people that had a really big impact on my life. He put a lot into perspective for me. I'm telling you, a lot. Particularly his very first book, The 48 Laws of Power. And there's parts of the preface of that book that I really relate to, and even I'm rereading it. I've listened to it as an audiobook, but I have a digital ebook version of it that I'm reading. And I'm also going through the Daily Laws, Robert Greene Daily Laws as well. And so I want to address some of the content of this. I definitely recommend that you look into some of this for yourself as well. But in particular, let's say 48 Laws of Power. There's one of the ways that he put it, and I'm going to try to take a quote from it, essentially, is my goal here. Yes. And essentially, in a lot of his acknowledgments, you know, he he's talked about quite a bit about just how he was thanking some of the people who helped him get some of the history lessons and some of the people who's collaborated with him on the book. But he also said, finally, to those people in my life who have so skillfully used the game of power to manipulate, torture, and cause me pain over the years, I bear you no grudges, and I thank you for supplying me with the inspiration for the 48 Laws of Power, which I think is definitely a very politically tactical way of presenting that. I mean, I certainly have I relate to that statement, and I do bear grudges. I mean, I certainly want to move forward from these people. I don't want to let those grudges take over too much of my life, because I've heard of a quote where if someone is angry and you're mad at another person, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to no longer exist. I'll put it that way, because I don't want to say a particular word on YouTube that's in relation to mortality. But that being said, if you know what I mean, a 3-letter word starts with D, the plural of dice. Anyway, okay. I think you're gonna get on with it. There's certainly a level of there's a particular law here that I believe that is relevant to the way that he presented it, and I'm gonna have to search for it. I thought that I just had it pretty easily. Yes, okay, yes, I see it now. And it's called infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky, you know. And so he's saying he bears no grudges. I think that that's him trying to not fall for, because one of what he says as well in his preface is that, basically it's this sentiment of never again. That I'm never going to look at your past, because he says that someone ought to be able to look both in the past and the future at the same time. And that looking, in the future, let me just see if I can even find it. And I didn't totally botch that. I was typing, but I wasn't searching because I didn't really have that one established. Okay, so let me see here. That you have to look in the past, in the future, at the same time. And essentially from what I get from what it is that he's saying, that the past is the past. Like, what happened is, what it is that happened. So, yeah, you have two faces for the future. The motto is no days on alert. Nothing should catch you by surprise, because you're constantly imagining problems before they arise. Instead of spending your time dreaming of your plan's happy ending, you must work on calculating every possible permutation and pitfall that might emerge in it. And then the other face of Janice looks constantly to the past, though not to remember past hurts or bear grudges, which, I mean, I don't think that there's something necessarily wrong with that, to remember past hurts or to bear a grudge. But I think that the main part is, certainly not to let that cloud your reason, for sure. And that the real purpose of backward glancing is to educate yourself constantly. You can learn from those who came before you, but also examining the mistakes you made in the past, the ones that have most grievously held you back. You analyze them in terms of the 48 laws of power, and you extract from them a lesson and an oath. I shall never repeat such a mistake. I shall never fall into such a trap again. If you can evaluate and observe yourself in this way, you can learn to break the patterns of the past, an immensely valuable skill. And so when he's saying, going back to the other quote, finally, to those people in my life who have so skillfully used the game of power to manipulate, torture, and cause me pain over the years, I bear you no grudges, and I thank you for supplying me with inspiration for the 48 laws of power. I think that he's just trying to not break the law of law 10, infection, avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. Now, I don't want to completely, expose his book there. I definitely do think that, I recommend the Robert Greene to you all as well. Apparently, they even banned this book in prisons because it was just way too valuable to the prisoners. And I can imagine, it equips them way too much. So they banned that, in prisons. But I also wanted to talk about the daily laws a little bit, and he's saying that, from the beginning of our existence as a species in this preface, we humans have depended on our connection to reality for our very survival and success. And without fully quoting him, he's essentially saying that from the very existence of our species, we were in this environment where we had to, or, our ancestors had to become highly sensitive to the environment so that they could be aware of the elements essentially and how to survive them. There's a on Amazon Prime, there's this series called Sausage Party. It's also a movie. And essentially Sausage Party it's really tied to reality in a way. It kind of is a parody on reality. And the general premise of it, well, the movie is that, these foods, they're alive and they get bought by humans, and then they get taken to, the humans residence, apartment, home, whatever you want to call it. And then, the humans eat the food, and effectively they unalive the food. They're harming the food in that regard. And essentially, what happened with Sausage Party is that there were these there are these non-perishables. And so you have like a Twinkie, and I believe a pack of like a bottle of alcohol as well. And there was another unperishable, but I think it's hilarious that a Twinkie is one of the non-perishables. I think that's absolutely hilarious. But nonetheless, just in terms of a food joke, right? And the health of the food. But nonetheless, I digress. One of what's trying to be portrayed over here, with the Twinkie, is that and with the non-perishables in general, they used to, back in the day, they used to know the truth. And they saw that people were really like not very people. They saw that the foods were not happy and everyone was scared to be bought. So then they came up with this song and this lie essentially to make it more comfortable, to make it more pleasant, a lot more emotionally bearable. If you don't want to be spoiled on the movie, I suggest that you maybe skip ahead. I don't know how long I'm doing this live in the moment, but it is what it is. It be what it be. My apologies. It be what it be. And what it is that I'm trying to say is that they came up with this lie and this song to kind of glorify being bought, so that then it was just a lot more emotionally comfortable, and then the foods would find out when they got bought what really happened. And so, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, the foods eventually revolt and they take over the grocery store. And then Sausage Party Foodtopia on Amazon Prime, I watched the entire series. They're starting to build a society, but they have to deal with the elements. The foods end up becoming the dominant species on planet Earth. So humans are no longer the dominant species, but then, and they use bath salts so that then the humans they kind of like get high enough, and then they realize what's actually happening in terms of like the foods are actually alive and that they can talk to the food. And as they leave the grocery store and they start to create foodtopia in this one particular section of the planet, then they're starting to build a society, and then they have to get ready to navigate the elements. So there's rain, there's a crow that comes through, among other factors. And all of this is just to relate to, humans had to do this too. Humans had to survive rain, human had to survive other animals, you know. And our ancestors did do that. Our ancestors did survive that, you know, clearly, like, here we are. So going back to the daily laws, Robert Greene, they took more control of their environment. And today, so many hundreds of thousands of years later, we have the same brain designed for the same purpose, but because we have increasingly gained control of our environment and the physical pressures have loosened dramatically, the dangers have become more subtle. They come in the form of other people, not leopards, and their tricky psychology and the delicate political and social games we have to play, you know. And because of these less obvious dangers, our greatest problem is that our minds tend to become less sensitive to the environment. We turn inward and absorbed in our dreams and fantasies, and we become naive. And to add to this dangerous brew, our culture tends to fill our heads with all kinds of false notions, making us believe things about the world and human nature, about what the world and human nature should be like, rather than what they actually are like, which goes back to what I was saying about Sausage Party. We take all of this for the truth. This is what I mean when I say, when LFA says that, most people know this. I don't agree. I don't agree that most people know the delicate political and social games that we have to play to navigate and survive in society. That, as I was saying in my introduction video, that humans are the most dominant species on the planet. And if we don't operate well amongst other people, and by well, there we go. And by well, I mean that if we operate in a way that results in other people thinking very poorly of us, that's going to affect our quality of life. And that can result in us being homeless in jail or unalived as a result of other people. And so we take all of this for the truth and act on these misconceptions. And just as in the past, the environment and reality eventually punish us for our delusionary behavior. We may not lose our lives, but our careers and relationships take wrong turns. We blame other people for our woes when all along the problem is inside us, stemming from our naivete and the fantasies we've absorbed, which unconsciously guide our actions. And one part that I really don't like is that some people, they want the fantasy. They don't want the quiet part to be said out loud. They're so uncomfortable about that. They don't like to talk about it because it's too forward, it's too transparent. I think that, frankly, that's a lack of strength of character, and I think that that's detrimental to. I think it's a trade-off. I think that there's some people that are going to be very lost in this and that are going to be making mistakes, and there's some people who just can't handle reality. The thing is, though, is that, like, we were able to handle reality. So I think it's very limiting on human potential. I really just don't like that some people really advocate for this not to be talked about. Like, I do think that this could be talked about in a virtuously balanced way, but in any case, it's disappointing to me. But nonetheless, some of the common false notions in our culture that can lead us astray, for instance, when it comes to our career, we believe that where we went to school and who we know and who we are connected to is the key to our future success. That with people, we operate under the belief that most of our friends and colleagues like us and want the best for us. And we imagine, that people will be grateful for any favors we do for them. I used to think when I was younger that everybody wants to shake your hand, and they want to give you the time of day. They want to get to know you. They want to figure out what it is that you're all about. They want to hear your story, that they'd be interested in trying to potentially be your friend, that we'd all want to get along, that they would be open to hearing what it is that they could learn from you, and that it was that people just were really interested in just other people like that, and that everybody, like, we're all in this together, and that everybody cared and had empathy for other people. I used to think that, but reality hit me in the face, yo. And in some ways, definitely I've seen some of the behaviors, I've seen some of the ways that some people treated other people, and I didn't want to be like that, but unfortunately to my detriment. Like, I see some people playing the game and I didn't want to do that, but that was to my detriment, as I've been talking about. We of course see that some people are narcissistic, aggressive, envious, grandiose, and manipulative, but we believe that those are just a few bad apples. You know that I might butcher this statistic. This might also just be in American society, that 1% of people commit 65% of the crimes. That is just a few bad apples. But what often happens is that at a fairly young, oh, rather, um, a most of us are capable of this. That we ourselves have. We believe that it's just a few bad apples, and that we ourselves have none of these qualities. But also that the average person, the average everyday person, is playing the game. You know, oh, I ghosted you because of ABC XYZ excuse. You know, I don't want to hang out with you because of ABC XYZ excuse, not just I just don't want to go. And you say, I just don't want to go, or what have you, or you don't uphold the fairy tale and the front and the story, that we're told as we're younger, or just of as I was saying earlier, you don't uphold I'm treating this job as if it's going to be my last job, and treating this next relationship as if it's going to be my last relationship, which I do think that you should do for a relationship. I think that there's a lot of people that are very sleazy with the way that they interact with relationships, which it really does not make me very motivated to participate in dating in the modern day. But nonetheless, what I'm just trying to say is that it's wild to me that just the average person is like that. The average everyday person is like that. What often happens, back to the book, is that at a fairly young age, burdened with such delusions, we enter the world and reality suddenly slaps us in the face. We discover that some people have fragile egos and can be devious and not at all what they seem. We are blindsided by their indifference or sudden acts of betrayal. We come to realize that the work world is riddled with political games that nobody has prepared us for. And as the years go by and the misreadings, missteps, and unrealistic decisions pile up, we can become bitter, confused, and damaged. And then if you try to voice that, and you try to come out and say that this is BS, this is all a bunch of BS, screw this, I don't want to participate anymore, I don't want to play anymore. Well, A, you appear unhappy and unlucky, so people want to avoid you because they don't actually really care that you're suffering. What a species, you know? And people see your unhappiness as an indication that you're not successful in life. Like, oh, no wonder you're miserable. Of course you're miserable, because look at all the bad decisions that you're making. You being miserable is the emotional representation of your incompetence in life. Even though I think that a lot of being miserable or cynical is someone who was once an optimist. It's so disappointing to me. It really is. Beyond that, some people, I've heard, like, the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. 80% of the people don't care about your problems, and 20% of the people are glad that you have them, which is a contrast from, if you don't necessarily know, if there's something you don't know about in life that school doesn't teach you, ask your friends and family. But your family doesn't necessarily know, they're not necessarily equipped to, just because they can give birth doesn't mean that they're equipped to be a parent. You know, a mother or a father are not necessarily a parent, and nonetheless, despite that, even your friends don't even know either. So you can go and reveal your problem to someone, and they say that you're trauma dumping. They judge you and they think that you're incompetent, among other factors. They say that you're killing the vibe. You're dampening the vibe. And you're I got caught up in the moment of just trying to speak. You're dampening the vibe, and you're being a burden to these other people. I think that is so unfortunate. I really do, you know. But nonetheless, that is just some of what I just think is just really, really, really sad about this existence, in the modern day. And so that's just, I just, at the very least, especially since we're 75 minutes in, I very much so just wanted to finish, grammar with this. And oh yeah, if someone's not necessarily upholding the status quo, like I said in Sausage Party, like the song and dance that's used to try to make people a lot more emotionally comfortable, and someone's trying to be realistic about what it is that life actually is about, and about the actual politics and what's actually going on beneath the artificial arbitrary surface that has been established by the culture to make people more comfortable, then you're autistic. Like, huh. So some people want to be lied to. They want to be played. They want this front, which is baffling to me. Do I think that it makes sense? Yes. I think it sucks. I think it's unfortunate. I think that's so dumb. And yet here we are. That being said, that is mainly what it is that I wanted to say about grammar, for sure, and definitely how disingenuous, and corrupt the game can be, and how much people want it to be that way as well. This is the existence that we have inherited. What I will try to say on a positive note is that I am trying to highlight it once again, a little bit of a broken record, but nonetheless, I'm trying to highlight it so that people could be aware of it, so that at the very least, ideally with liberal arts, I want to be able to try to keep the good while trying to minimize and reduce the corruption that has been present with the liberal arts as a byproduct of just, with the result of just highlighting some of what's going on here, so that it can be noticed, and then it can ideally be defeated, because it's very, like, socially acceptable to lie. It's very socially acceptable, and I hate that. But you know what? As I'm saying, it's the name of the podcast. It Be What It Be podcast. Thank you very much for joining us here today with this second episode. We're going to be doing a part 3 for sure. Yes, indeed. You can count on me for that. I will just be bringing you back up to the homepage. Home base is YouTube. I would be very much so grateful for you to like, comment, subscribe, and share to the It Be What It Be podcast. To also take a look at some of the other different links. Follow on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Blue Sky, and TikTok. I really appreciate the views that I've gotten. I really appreciate my subscribers and my 7 followers on TikTok. This is going to be what I'm trying to do to try to make my 2025 to try to really get into this content creation. So I'm very grateful for a lot of the people that have engaged with my content as well. Very proud of the 244 views that I have on one of my shorts, as well as the over 100 views that I have on my reels on Instagram and the over 800 views that I have on my TikTok. I really appreciate you once again joining me here today, and stay tuned to the channel for some more shorts based off of this live stream, as well as just some more content down the road, trying to do this content grind. I'm very grateful that even though I don't have necessarily everything that I would like, in life, there's certainly more money that I'd like to be making. But I'm very grateful that I do have the opportunity with this technology, that, I'm relatively safe, that I live alone despite the cost of living. I got really lucky, but that's something else, and that I really want to try to be grateful for what it is that I have, and that I have the capacity to be this content creator and to be able to deliver to you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.